Okay, we are recording. Right,
Hi,
everyone. Hey, Shika, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. All right, we're going to jump into this. So, real quick, my name is Chand,
I'm
and
Shikha.
this is Shika, and we are Somatic Astrology. So, just a little bit about Somatic Astrology. The Somatic Astrology was kind of birthed, in at least for us, from our experiences of learning from evolutionary astrology and from somatic practices. And it kind of combines as above, so below. At least that's how I think about it. And astrology being, what's in the celestial heavens, and somatics being in the body, and they correspond. There's a correlation, there is a magical rhyming or rhythmic connection. And so we want to explore this together, where I explore more of the somatics part, Shika helps us explore more of the astrology part. And then hopefully we can together blend these together and help each other and help people through their lives, healing, chronic illnesses, and eventually like liberation. Um, okay, I think that's a little blurb on somatic astrology. And then, real quick, this episode. So, this is a series that we're going to be talking about natural archetypes, and basically, we're going to be starting from Aries and the polarity point being Libra. So, I'm going to leave it off to you, but I think this is going to be a series, and we're going to do small episodes on each.
Yeah.
All right, Shekha, do you want to?
Sure.
Do you want
I'll just take a minute to describe what natural archetypes are. People are very familiar with what archetypes in astrology are, even though some people may not understand um, the real definition of archetypes as such. So,
Mhm.
archetypes are fundamental constituents of our own consciousness and the universe's consciousness. And the 12 archetypes in astrology, the zodiac, the 12 houses, the 10 planets. There is a natural correlation among them, and that is what natural archetypes mean in the sense that Aries is the same archetype as Mars, its ruling planet, and the first house of the chart, where it is a natural home for Mars and Aries both. So similarly for Libra, its planetary ruler is Venus. So they're the same archetype, and they're the same archetype again as the seventh house. So we'll see that in the next slide. But these are what natural archetypes are, the natural correlation between them, and their fundamental constituents of our own consciousness. So we are not, and when we talk about Aries and Libra, we're not talking about sun, moon, rising. That's a very key distinction. What we're talking about are all the ways that Aries and Libra manifest in our charts when we have planets, asteroids, sensitive points like AC, DC, MC, IC, all of that, or even just houses without planets in them, the area of our birth chart that shows up as Aries or Libra. So everyone is a combination of all 12 archetypes, but we're going to talk about them in 6 pairs of polarities. So yeah, with that, let's get started.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think, and this will explain why we're talking about Aries, because Libra, the archetype of Libra, is the polarity point, and I think this is probably a good chart for people to study. So, uh, I guess I can try my hand at. So
Yeah.
this is the natural astrology zodiac wheel or the birth chart, and I think, as you can see, what we have marked out. So we'll just go around the wheel, starting from the first house, and then we'll go all the way to the 12th house. So we're starting with first house, as Shika had pointed out, Aries and Mars, being the same archetype, and the polarity point is going to be opposite to it, which is the seventh house, Libra and Venus. And so what we decided was, and I think I got inspired by Ari Moshe's book on beginners for evolutionary astrology, was to study them, as Shaka said, in pairs. So we will talk about the archetype of Aries, and I think for the purpose of this video, we will just say Aries. But what we will mean is, first house and Mars. And when we say Libra, we're going to be also talking about seventh house and Venus, and we'll talk about them kind of comparing and contrasting and reflecting on each. Okay. We'll move to the next slide. Shikha, do you want to say something here?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, excellent.
Um,
Okay, cool. So, can we- so what I wanted to basically kind of ask, and I think you've really expressed this well, as a natural expression, shadow expression, right? I wanted to ask, I guess, just lead us through what is kind of like like the general essence and theme of the Aries, Mars, and first house archetype.
Okay. So in evolutionary astrology, the zodiac itself represents the journey of a soul from separating from the source, the universe, to merging back with the universe. And Aries is considered the first spark of the soul as it separates from the source, from the universe. And we go through the zodiac until we reach the last sign, which is Pisces, which is considered as wanting to merge back with the source. So, as the first sign of the zodiac, it is about self discovery. The soul has just separated from the universe, and it is just pure instinct, pure will to discover itself. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? What am I doing? So, it's just pure self discovery and evolutionary momentum. Um, what happens here is that Aries, they have a need to act their impulses, and they must do that, which can be very frustrating for people around them. I know that. But we need to understand and support the need for people with Aries placements to act on the impulses because that's how they discover themselves. They
Mm-hmm.
must be impulsive. And there is no malice here. In fact, Aries is also considered as a self cleaning oven of karma because they'll just act and then they'll face the consequences. That's how they learn. It's like a child seeing fire, doesn't realize it's hot, tries to touch the fire,
Mm-hmm.
realizes it's hot, and then moves back. That is Aries. Like you don't know what's happening, you go up, just like act, then you learn. Okay, this is not good for me. This is good for me. So it's a self-cleaning oven of karma. Um, and because of the need to just act to discover, they are pioneers. They initiate. They're very courageous. They're not really afraid because they don't know what to be afraid of, and
Mm-hmm.
they're very direct. So
Right,
this
right.
is a natural expression of Aries. Like Aries, in it's these are the strengths of Aries.
Expensive, expensive.
Yeah.
I guess just here, and maybe we can get to the shadow
Mhm.
expression in a little bit, but this was beautiful what you just said, and about how it's a self-cleaning oven of karma, right? Kind of like how a child is going to learn, and that's the way, and that's the strength of Aries. They're going to do so many things based out of instinct, and that's how they kind of discover themselves and discover the world is through their own action, right? It's kind of like this more individualistic in some way, just based on the zodiac wheel. And the one thing that I was, and again, a lot of this right now that I've been reading is Ari Moshe's beginning, a book on beginners for evolutionary astrology, and he talks about it also where Aries is kind of like, now birth has happened, and how is a child going to learn and discover? And I think that was like a very apt thing, was that the essence here, and I think he says this here, is the essence. It symbolizes the constant experience of becoming, uh, in this kind of way, which I found really interesting. Uh, the one thing that I wanted to ask you, like, is there, like, for example, any example that you have of this, like, because we're not talking about Aries Sun, right? We're just talking about people who have more, or like just Aries energy, I guess, just the archetype of Aries, right? Got it.
You're the right person to ask this question too, because you've been as an Aries. Tell us about your dating life.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So Venus and Aries, yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I
Yeah,
guess
I
I
have
guess I
no
think
Aries placements except for an empty first house. So don't ask me. Like you should talk about it.
it was interesting you're saying this, because when I was talking about this, is yeah, I think like the word that comes to me is passion. The word that come, and again, definitely, like, this instinct, but also just passion is really what kind of comes. It's not muted, for at least my expression, when it comes to like dating or intimacy and this kind of stuff, like beauty relationships. It's very intense. It's passionate. But I was actually thinking about the other day that I also have a lot of Aries friends around me, which kind of
Mhm.
makes sense. I was like, suddenly I was like, oh, there's another Aries. This is Aries. This is Aries. There's a lot of like Aryan archetypes, that the energy around me, and I get a good window into the Aries archetype. It's kind of like what I, for example, a client of mine and a lot of Aries energy just has this resolution of like not giving up. Like that concept doesn't exist. Is to be like, no, I'm gonna do this, and I think this might be a good segue into. I just trying to see if there's anything else in the notes that the it's again like self-centeredness comes. to my mind when I'm thinking about Aries, right? They're like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I mean, wow, we should dedicate this to my grandmother, like you had reminded,
Yeah.
whose birthday it is. So that is my nanny's birthday, and she's like a true Aries. Like that is like a very typical, like the first one to do everything, like you mentioned, pioneering and initiating. And I think a good point here to make is, and courageous and direct, like very clear. Like this was a young girl in a remote village in India who was the first girl to go to, school beyond eighth grade when girls weren't allowed. And that entire stories is basically a great story of her resolution, like of the resolve that she had. And it was kind of like the audacity is what comes to mind, like, which is how the village was looking at her, like, how dare she? And she did not have that idea in her mind. What do you mean? I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do this. Like, I want to do this, so I'm going to do this. Like, that was her idea. And she fought like the entire village. Like people were rooting for her to fail,
Yeah.
especially the men. But she did it. And she went out to, you know, leave the village, come to Delhi, like do everything. This was a woman who did a lot of her firsts, like the first, not for her, but for her lineage, but also for like women in general. First woman to do this. First, one of the first women of on stage in Delhi in theater. One of the first women to do this, one of the first women to do this, and she acted her whole life. And again, divorced her husband, and then was a single mother for the longest time. Like became a famous Bollywood star. Like a lot of her, even at that age, in her 80s, she was traveling to London, to all these places because that idea of no doesn't exist. Like no, I can't stop it. And so I feel like I have a good understanding of Aryan energy. The one thing, and I
Oh,
think this might be a good, so happy birthday, Nani, and thank you, Shiga,
yeah.
for like
Happy
bringing
birthday, Nani.
true Aries, right?
Yeah, I can't think of a better example, to be
Better
honest.
example, yeah. And for those who want to like go and look her up, her name is Kamlesh Gill, and you find her on Google. And if you're in India, you probably have seen her as BG in Vicky Donor and so many other movies. And I think it almost kind of is a good segue with where this powerful energy, this power of initiation of doing, uh, where and I've seen that the obvious example here, you're going to be butting heads with people because
Mm.
everyone is saying you can't do this, and it's like, no, I am going to do this. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to do this on my own, right? And I think that kind of can like delve a little bit into the shadow expression, right? Like how
Actually,
can
it's a strength as well
it's
because
a strength.
Aries is not afraid of confrontation.
Yeah.
That is actually a Libra shadow to be afraid of confrontation. That's like Libra needs to lean into the Aries energy here.
Mm-hmm,
Aries
mm-hmm,
shadow, yes, the me first can become chronic because they really don't know how to think about others. As they get older and more mature, they learn to also consider the needs of others and to convert that raw instinct, that impulse to act, into conscious leadership. Because Aries are also natural leaders. If there's a
naturally.
problem, yeah, if there's a problem, Aries folks will be the first out of the gate to go deal with it. Not because they want to be leaders, just because they need to act. And that's a good thing because they also say what they mean. They're not people pleasers. They're not
Yeah.
conflict avoidant. They just say it as it is. Only thing is that it may change soon because they like, they just constantly becoming. Like that's such a poetic way to put it. So
I, you
that's
know,
actually a good thing.
yeah, absolutely. And thank you for like that reframing, because the other thing that I'm also, I think what I think there's good points here, and that lead us into that is that the one thing which constantly comes when you talk about the Aries archetype or Mars is like aggression, and it's like, or it's like
Mm.
confrontation, or it's like fighting. It's like even the term war is used a lot, right? Like everyone like war and stuff like that, which I understand has been shaped. And Ari Moshe really writes really well that how this patriarchal conditioning and that war has become like a common societal theme only recently under capitalism, right? Like, but that wasn't the theme for most of humanity. We weren't like fighting wars like this. So I guess the idea, what I'm trying to say is like this strength and you mentioned that, they have the leadership instinct, and there's a general self-centeredness here which is so important for them to like, hey, this is my path. uh when does it when does this confrontation part become violence, become
Yeah.
confrontation, which is not generative, becomes, like, because I guess that is the shadow aspect, right? That is when that
Yes.
becomes, I guess, could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes. So Aries has righteous anger in the sense that if their boundaries are crossed, they'll tell people to back off. That is a healthy assertion. It's known as the sign of assertion. But shadow is when they're not able to contain um, that anger. Anger is a useful emotion, right? Like it tells us where our boundaries are crossed, where our needs are not being met. But when we are not able to transmute it, it can become very aggressive. And yes, that's why Aries folks can be very violent because they're not able to help themselves. That doesn't mean that the Mars is making them like this or Aries is making like
Yeah,
this. It's a correlation, not a causation. The people with Aries placements still have to take accountability for how they behave, right? Your
yeah.
zodiac signs reflect your reality; they don't cause it. So they have a quick temper. My mom is Aries moon. Your
Mhm.
mom is Aries moon.
Yep, yep.
Um, so yeah, they can get angry. But instead of using that anger to inform where their boundaries are being crossed and what needs are not being met and to work on that, they can outsource the problem to someone else and then become violent towards them.
That's actually a great good point, because it brings up a good theme of anger, right, in
Mm.
general, and especially how anger is generally demonized in the modern world, especially for people of color and women specifically. It turns out a lot of the areas that I'm thinking about are turn out to be mostly like femmes, or like queer people and women, that at least that I have in my life. And anger is one aspect that, uh, like you mentioned, like the direction and the channeling and even a healthy expression, because that is such a powerful motivating force, which the Aryan archetype is not scared to embody, is not scared to like lead with that. But I have personally also seen Venus in Aries myself, right? How that uh, anger can, yeah, it can like cause so many problems. Either complete repression can happen because it's too much to deal with, or it's completely out of control, and it's like a fire which is like just burning people around you, including yourself. Um, I think that's such an important thing, because the other thing that I have also seen, personally, what I have also seen is that sometimes, and I've noticed this in the healing, world, and how this anger, this kind of, Aries, I was like, anger is probably one of the Aries like fuels, right? It is one of the fuel which keeps them going at times. If that can burn one out to the point that they're now not able to handle the anger, which, or that kind of fire, I should, like, that's not even say, like, that kind of fire, they're not able to handle that, and now they're forced to repress it, like, that it's kind of like the fire's like burnt out, and it's kind of like a, I don't know, I'm thinking about like a burnt out Aries, and
Mhm.
now there's just fatigue, there's like chronic pain, there's skin issues, because it's like just the fire's just like sort of smoldering inside,
Yeah.
rather than it being their true power, giving them vitality, and helping them do stuff like leadership, activism, being like, uh, initiating, like, doing all these things, leaving harmful relationships, keeping people accountable, and stuff like that. So I guess everything can lead into the shadow expression if not done well. But do you personally think like Aries people will be more like prone to that kind of stuff, to violence and aggression, if they're not mindful?
Yes, of course. I mean, violence is also a spectrum, right? I mean, they'd definitely be the ones to tell people off, have a little bit of road rage. One of my best friends is like Aries' son was his birthday a couple of days ago. Definitely have issues with road rage.
Road rage, okay.
Yeah. But then, most people will if you live in India. So
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's true. And I guess that's like the kind of the shadow expression. And
yeah.
the shadow expression here is, I guess, when it's becoming out of balance.
Mm.
When it's out of balance, when it's not the healthy expression. But uh, do you think this is like a good time to like? I guess it's a good point. Lack of foresight, which we can kind of cut off here, because you
Yeah.
can be so focused on like the now that you might not see.
Yeah. They have no foresight. So it's really their life is on like two steps forward, one step backward. This is the self cleaning oven of karma because they
Hmm.
just they discover themselves through action, not through strategy, not through reflection.
Got it. Okay. And should we? I guess we can lean into now the Libra, which is the polarity point,
Yeah.
which is 180 degrees opposite of the Aryan archetype on the zodiac or on the birth chart will be Libra, Venus in seventh house.
Yeah.
And as a Libra rising, I'm happy to like share that. Yeah, clearly, like
Yeah.
I guess this is a beautiful drawing by the way. People Shikha have is a gifted, talented artist, and yeah, it's the balance. It's like that's at least I think is in Zoran Mandani is a Libra sun, I believe, right? His son is in Libra, I believe. One of that,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and I believe this is also the signs. I mean, technically, they also can be good leaders, and I'm guessing, because they're able to like balance diplomats, I should say, like very diplomatic people, right? At least I present myself like that. It's like, hey, I'll listen to this, and this. It comes naturally to me to try and keep harmony, equal partnership. Or you mentioned good listener. I don't think I have been a great listener. At least that's the feedback that I've gotten. Or I should say that, I'm actually a decent listener now, but at least when my shadow expression was predominating for a lot of like
So
Gemini
the
and
thing
stuff.
with you is you are not just Venus in Aries, which is like a very important placement, but you also have Pluto in the first house, which makes you an Aries soul. So you're both Libra ascendant, but also an Aries soul. So you live this polarity every moment.
That
So
ex- that is a very wow. That is exactly how I feel. I
yeah.
feel like I live this polarity. That polarity is like it's kind of like an every moment
Mm,
thing. Uh, but yeah, I see that I see this what you mentioned, like Libra being kind of trying to balance things, trying to be like,
yeah.
oh, okay. Anyways, is there? Would you like speak a little bit about the Libra, like the kind of general essence or theme?
Yeah. So Libra is the opposite of Aries. Aries is me first, Libra is partnership first.
Got it.
Which is their strength, but also, where they move into their shadows, which we'll talk about later. But relational harmony is very important to Librans because they understand the importance. And so, from the first house to sixth house, from Aries to Virgo, we are still discovering the self. With Libra, the true engagement with the other stars, and there is no self without other, right? Um, we live in society. We are like social mammals. Uh, how we relate with others is a very important part. So Libra is not just about romantic partners. Of course, that's a huge part of this archetype. But in general, how we connect with the other in any moment, whether they're friends, community, at work, uh, that harmony is very important to Librans. And but also they do seek partnership, like
Yeah.
stable long-term partnerships to build a life with someone, share a life with someone. That's also very important motivator for this archetype. And when I say good listener, it's the sense that they listen to what other people need in order to meet their needs. Aries likes to meet their needs. Libras prioritize meeting the needs of others, which is a beautiful gift to have. Like that is why we've been able to build civilizations, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would have been, I don't know. Yeah, because I think capitalism actually forces us to become more Aries, more competitive, more self-focused, individualistic.
Yeah.
But the collective, the village, these cultures, they're like very Libra based
Like
and
that's actually
unconditional.
go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
So unconditional love. So the higher octave of Venus is Neptune. Moon, Venus, Neptune, they're like related. But Venus is the lower octave and Neptune is the higher octave in the sense that Neptune is this pure consciousness, transcendence, surrender, and like full of compassion for because of flaws in people, not in spite of them. So, one of the evolutionary goals of Venus and Libra is to become like Neptune, which is unconditional love. That doesn't mean self abandonment. We'll talk about that in the shadow expression of Venus. But the goal is to give to people because you are abundant, not because there are unwritten contracts.
Got it. That's actually very yeah, again here, like with Libra, clearly, like, from what I understood, even from reading these texts and just in general, was how this polarity from, the Aryan archetype trying to discover themselves through a relationship with themselves, right? While this is trying to learn about themselves through relations with others, Like this is, and which is kind of like, you move, as you said, from within to outside, and suddenly now it's like becoming part of the community. And how, for Aryan archetype will have to be, you know, to fully be embodied, will have to balance with the polarity of the Libran energy, and Libran will have to do it with Aryan, because this is right now, it seems like it is becoming, how do I relate to people, like you said, what are my relations? And my father being a Libra son, I see this a lot, because I think their meaning of life in some way will be derived from their relationships, and how it is, right? Especially even my, like, I believe my north node being in the seventh house, where there's like, this kind of, that is a constant need, is of, it's for a partnership which is balanced and harmonious.
Mm.
uh, and at least, for the last many years, I leaned into the shadow expression a lot with my Libra, with the Libra shadow expression, which was, like you mentioned, like this is really wanting to give, right? Like Libra is like, hey, I want you to be well, and I want you to be happy, and I want to build this relationship based on that. uh but then the shadow expression, which about of codependency, of actually like giving so that I am needed. And I think he
Yes.
writes about this in this book, is the need to be needed syndrome, which was like,
Yes.
which was like, so like, and he actually talks about this, it's mentioned, you mentioned about a good listener, because they say that, uh, he says the Libra archetype, as well as all other air archetypes, symbolize the archetype of projection, which is relative Libra, when basic needs are not meant when basic needs are not met within any soul, the soul will tend to project those needs into another person, and thus here, quote, and meet another according to the filter how the individual soul wishes to be heard and met.
Mm.
And
That is
this is
a
like,
standard for relationships, right? We always
that
seek
for,
people where
yeah.
we're projecting our repressed parts onto them.
I mean, this like hit me so hard. So basically says that the shadow expression Libra archetype, to become overly invested in other people as a means of establishing one's own sense of self-worth and self-awareness, and thus
Yeah.
to listen to another but not actually hear what is being truly
Mm.
spoken.
Yeah. They
And
project. Mm.
and this happened recently, actually, when I was talking to someone, a friend, and we were, and I was basically, I asked them, I was like, hey, how are you feeling, right? And she said how she was feeling. And then I got kind of almost upset, because I didn't get what I needed to hear. And I said something where, and then immediately I noticed, I mean, she mentioned it, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. I literally asked you. It's almost like, I'm like, hey, tell me, I want to know what you're feeling. But then as soon as you mentioned how you're feeling, I'm like, but you didn't talk about my feelings, because I kind of wanted to hear about what you felt about me. And so it just hit me. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm trying to maintain harmony. I'm really trying to build an equal, harmonious partnership or relationship, stuff like that. But like you mentioned, like, till I think for Libra, it's important to have the Libran archetype can give in that sense, when they can lose themselves, and it's really
Right.
like bring their own self awareness and self worth. Uh, and anyways, like, I guess I'll stop talking. But is there anything that you want to say about that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, we now talking about the shadows, right? One is codependency because, Libra is so conflict avoidant. They they want to maintain harmony at all costs, even if it's superficial harmony.
Yeah,
So that conflict avoidance, what it just does, like problems just simmer. They try to like push things under the rug. That doesn't really work. They stay there. They don't stay repressed. They come out. And Libras can also get angry, by the way. That's something they have in common with Aries because
mm,
they in their shadow expression, they can self abandon so much. They can let go of their own needs, their boundaries to maintain relational harmony, to please the partner. All that it does is create resentment, and like
yeah.
that resentment builds, and then Librans can actually have like an explosion. They can get angry.
That is like very real, because I believe like that was me, at least in my, I mean, that has been me,
Mm.
uh to such an extent, and of giving, or at least what I felt was giving, which some maybe the other person didn't even ask for, and then to build resentment. And I was like, yeah, I'm Libra rising, but there's a lot of anger here, and it's coming from, I guess, the shadow expression of losing oneself, maybe in a relationship.
Yeah. Mhm. And also, they give with unwritten contracts, that is the lower vibration Libra, where they can do a lot, but there is an unspoken expectation that the partner will also give in kind.
Yeah,
And when that doesn't happen, Librans can feel very devastated and betrayed. So the evolutionary goal here is to give unconditionally, because you're giving from abundance and not because, um, like giving because you want to be needed. You have a need to be needed, not because of that. You're giving because you're able to give. And that's what relationships are about. So the overcoming the unwritten contracts is a huge growth area for Librans. And also they're very indecisive because again, this is
yep,
conflict avoidance. They don't want to take decisions in case that, if it will like upset the balance, upset the
yeah,
partner or bring in some conflict. So that's why they really need to lean into the Aries energy to not be afraid of conflict, to assert their needs, to assert their boundaries. Like Aries needs to learn to consider others in order to move from impulse into purposeful action, become a purposeful leader. Libra needs to lean into Aries so that they are not self abandoning, they
yeah,
are self defined. And what happens when Librans can integrate that Aries energy? It becomes like showing up in relationship as a whole person, not as a half looking for someone else to complete them.
yeah.
That's when you
Mhm.
can lose yourself, because if the other person is not really as evolved, and of course this person is also not very evolved, they're looking for someone else to complete them. That is just like lead to a lot of power struggles.
That's so interesting because even, here it's, and that is something that I've definitely struggled with. And I've actually seen this in some people that I know closely also, the indecisiveness. And I think it comes from, and our emotional rights about like not trusting one's own instincts, which is what
Mm.
Aries are pretty good at. Aries is like, oh,
Mm.
I want to do this. Kind of like this, like really a lot of belief in themselves. And I guess that is, at least right now, it's part of my journey is to like kind of embody the Aries energy, or like, as the Akashic records, you just said, embody your inner warrior in that kind of sense, like like a true like grounded warrior who's like, okay, moving with instinct and impulse. Uh, and so I guess, so basically getting burned out from trying to keep the balance, codependent, like like how both of these signs need to lean in, both of these energies or archetypes need to lean into each other. Uh, and how Libra is, I guess, trying to maintain the balance, but really needs to find wholeness within, like you said, without trying to get find completion with another person.
Right.
And same thing with
So that
Aries, right? Like, go ahead.
So the harmony is not just relational harmony. Libra needs to find that harmony within themselves. So when they will internally balanced, internally harmonious, they're able to show up better. They can give unconditionally,
Hmm.
um, and not like move out of enmeshment or codependency.
Yep. No, I think that is a. It's interesting. He writes here how Libran archetype represents where a soul is wired to awaken through the journey of relationship, represents the greatest potential for balance and harmony, as well as the greatest tendency to fluctuate between extremes, indecisiveness, and a false sense of balance. And for our Aries archetype, it represents the soul, represents where a soul is wired to read to direct the desires of the soul through conscious action. Uh, and I think that's the main thing for Aries is to learn that you can't do everything on your own. You will
Yeah.
have to, if you for truly achieve action, to truly achieve, like some Aries that I have like spoken, to, like Aryan predominant people are like pretty driven with social justice, to be honest. Like a lot of them are driven with social justice, and it's interesting. And I'm sure like there's a, these are like people who are in my community, so we all are. But the idea, what I've also seen is the struggle where they're not able to um,
Sustain.
sustain, because it can't be done on its own, because ultimately it does require, building partnership and relationship and community. It needs organizing at a community level, which will mean working with people, which will require patience, which will require, not getting pissed off when you're being patient, like and so like leaning into the Libran archetype too. get things done because you won't be able to do everything on your own. Uh, so that's interesting. Let's see what you have on. Yeah, I think this is
Just
an interesting side. Do you want to talk about this?
yeah, I mean, this is just uh, these polarities are all dialectics, right? Like you're
Yeah,
constantly balancing self versus other. That is first house and seventh house, ascendant and descendant, Aries, Libra, Mars, Venus. And this is the theme that will come up in this entire series of the like 6 pairs of polarities that we will cover. And the Aries is about discovery of self. Um, Libra is about discovery of self through others,
yeah,
in relation to others. I want to take a moment to talk about Aries rising and Libra rising charts, because this is a very interesting case. Aries rising charts, so the first house will start at Aries. So every house actually is just them, the undiluted archetype of whatever that house is. Yeah. So their Aries rising, first house will be starting at Aries, second house will start at Taurus, third house with Gemini.
yeah.
So they're like very undiluted that way. The
Interesting.
interesting thing about Libra rising charts are every house will start at its polarity.
Mm-hmm.
So people with Libra rising charts or late degree Virgo, I'm a very late degree Virgo rising. So my chart actually looks more like a Libra rising than yours. What will happen is we will have planets in certain signs which will naturally be placed in the house of their polarity.
Yeah,
So the constant push pull that you feel as a Libra rising, even if you did not have Pluto in the first house, even if you did not have like Venus in Aries, that push pull exists within you, like is coded into your chart. Because Libra rising,
mm,
but the first house, you're discovering yourself through others.
yeah,
But you have Aries starting on the cusp of the seventh house. So you're a very Aries person in one on one connections.
yeah.
So it's been
It's
constantly put in. Yeah.
no, that's that. Yeah, exactly. I remember you mentioning this, and it kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, that explains a lot. That explains my life.
Yeah.
That explains my life because first house is I mean like you mentioned, like Libra in the first house. And this is a great
Yeah.
example. If somebody who has Libra in the first house, so you have the Libran archetype of finding themselves through other people. It is, and please, like feel free, like fill in here also. If Libra is in the first house, that means the idea of I'm of connecting with others is going to be filtered through an Aryan energy, which is kind of like is that like
Yeah.
how would you explain that? I guess like how does that work when there's Libra in the first house?
So if the first house or Aries or Mars, it is about self-discovery. And Aries, I think, chart would just be discovering them through themselves, just their instinct. But for you, that instinct takes the form of relationships themselves. Like you discover yourself through others. That is very important to you as a Libra rising. You don't really know who you are if it weren't for your partnerships, for your relationships.
Yeah.
That may not be the case for someone who's just Aries rising, right? So that's you in how you discover yourself. That's the first house. But in the seventh house, you bring in more Aries energy instead of Libra energy.
Which would mean that in
So
relationships, I
yeah,
would n-
be
be
more self,
be
probably
very
more self
centered
centered
and
or yeah, but also like very pioneering, very initiating. You may probably go after what you want, but then also, you know, may not see things through because Aries is cardinal fire. It initiates, it doesn't sustain. So these are all, but none of these things are like fixed, right? Like
of
when we are
course.
younger, these archetypes have more of a hold on us. But as we get older, through experience, we learn, or through just the help of astrology, you can consciously integrate the polarities.
Yeah. Got it. No, no. Thanks for again bringing that back. Okay, cool. Yeah. Any closing thoughts that we have?
Uh, no, I'm just looking at my notes if there's anything I've missed, but I guess I've covered it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, so this is a great chart. And I think what we're going to be doing is the next episode, we'll go to Taurus, second house, and polarity pointing Scorpios. We're going to try and understand the
Yeah.
essence, the natural expressions, shadow expressions in relation to the polarity points. And then
Yeah. That would be a very interesting episode.
yeah, Taurus and Scorpio should be very interesting, without a
Yeah.
doubt. Uh,
Yeah.
Specifically for me, because a lot of my planets are in these houses. But but I think for a lot of people, just because
Yeah.
it's Scorpio,
No, I'm Pluto in second house, so my polarity point is the eighth house.
priority point is 8,000.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, well, we
Mm.
will put in some stuff in the description, and you can find, somatic astrologies, my Instagram, somatic
Instagram.
astrologies Instagram on in the description. So, and please throw in any questions. I'm going to send this to all my friends. I'm going to tell them each and every one to comment so that we can get more about this.
Yeah.
Just get it
And send
circulating.
it to all our Aries and Libra friends. A shout
Yeah,
out
I'm
to
going to send it
them.
to all my Aries and Libra friends. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. All right, cool. Okay, thanks, Shika.
All
Again,
right.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we will meet soon for the second episode in the series.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.